Shalom, my name is Tirza Lewis with Direct Akkad Israeli Beit Midrash. Today we will be looking at the art of flowing, and this is Hebraic Womanhood 101, Episode 6. Hebrew women flow like water. What does it mean to flow like water? Flowing is being attentive to the leading and directing of the Most High. It's the opposite of being rebellious and stiff-necked. How does the word of Yahweh affect us? The word of Yahweh causes us to act. When we flow, we act upon the word that we hear from the Most High. It causes us to obey the word. So our action is obedience, because you can have an action of disobedience, right? So our action is obedience. And this is the essence of the Hebrew word Shema, which means to hear and to obey. This is also the essence, flowing is also the essence of the Hebrew word Torah. Torah means law or instruction in English. The Hebrew word moreh means teacher. And normally when we speak about a moreh, we're speaking about a teacher of the Torah or a teacher of the instruction that's given from the Most High. It's interesting that the two words Torah and moreh have the common root word yara, and yara means to flow like water. So when we're talking about flowing like water, we're talking about being able to receive the instruction given from the Most High and to be able to act upon that instruction through obedience to that word. So when we hear the word, it causes us to turn. It causes us to change. It causes us to flow with the Most High and to agree with him about what he says and agree that his word is true or emet. So I want us to try to remember these concepts as we go through this presentation, thinking about the word Torah, thinking about the word moreh, and thinking about how both of those words have this idea, this essence of flowing like water, which comes from their root word, yara. Being attentive to the leading and directing of the Most High means that we're flexible when it comes to changing our course to line up with Yah's will and his way. We can be corrected by the word. We're teachable. We will convert. We will change. We will be conformed. We will be molded by what he says for us to do. Flowing is being flexible to adapt when hard situations arise. So thinking about it from the perspective of being attentive to the leading and directing of the Most High, and how when we are attentive to that leading and directing, we hear his word and we change and we're affected by it. But also when things happen, we're not stopped up. So we're able to adapt, we're able to change, we're able to move and keep moving and lining ourselves up with him. Proverbs 24 verse 10 says, if you fail under pressure, your strength is too small. So if we allow hard situations to stop us, if we become dammed up when things happen, and you know, that means that our faith and our strength is small. So does a rock in a stream prevent the water from flowing around it? No, the water will flow around. It'll even cut into the land around the stream to make a way to keep flowing. And so the same thing with us believers in the Most High, is that when things happen, when hard situations happen, we have to be flexible enough to be able to adapt course to go around those rocks and keep flowing. It's having an understanding and a trust and a faith in the Most High sovereignty, that he's in control no matter what is happening in our lives. So flowing isn't this intangible thing. Flowing is something that is practical. It's something that we can feel. Think about how a plant will move around obstacles in its way to get to the sunlight. It will literally change. A flower will literally change the position of its face to be able to get more sunlight. A vine will creep around a house, right? So that it's able to get from the shady parts to the sunny parts. And so when things happen in our life, it don't cause us to turn away from the Most High, but it causes us to turn towards him. It causes us to run towards him with even more fervence. It causes us to continue in him and keep moving in him despite of situations that are at hand. Our foremothers taught us this art of flowing. Let's look at an example given to us in the Torah of how a mother teaches her daughter how to flow, and how this results and how the result of their flowing flows down and even led to the redemption of the nation of Israel from bondage to Egypt, and flows down to us today in the form of the Torah given through Moshe to us as his people. The art of flowing, the mother. And a man of the house of Levi went and took as wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. This is Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. So let's apply this being attentive to the leading and the directing of the Most High. When we look at this woman in the scriptures, Jochebed, this was her name. She was the mother of prophets. If you think about it, from her single womb came forth Moses, who was a prophet, Aaron, who was a prophet, and Miriam, who was a prophetess. The scriptures don't say if she or her husband were also prophets. However, it is clear that Moses was the chosen one to help bring about the deliverance of Israel from Egypt. So if she was not aware of the plan of the Most High, she was at least aware of the speciality, the peculiarness of her new son. And if she wasn't aware of it just by looking at him, which we see in the scriptures that she looked at him and she saw that he was beautiful, she had Aaron and Miriam present, who, although they were children at the time, they had the calling of being prophets. The scripture says that she saw, or ra'ah, this child, which means to perceive or to discern. Remember our episode on discretion. So she's looking at this child, and she's looking at him not from a vantage point of just, looking at him. She's looking at him from a discretion vantage point. And she's seeing that he's a beautiful, or a tov, a good, a perfect child, a beautiful son. So she's able to follow the leading of the Most High to act for the safety of her child. So she's able to hear this decree, so to speak, from the Most High, that this child is beautiful, that he has a calling upon his life. So she's being attentive to this leading, attentive to this directing from the Most High. But she has a situation, and it's a hard situation, right? It's perhaps one of the hardest situations that a mother in this position would have to live with and have to deal with. She has to make a choice in this situation. There's this decree that's against her child. A death decree to throw him into the Nile so that he would die by the death of drowning. So she has to think about what she's going to do. Is she going to follow this decree? Or is she going to be like the stream that has this big boulder in it and move around that boulder and keep flowing? When we look at what she does, it involves sacrificing her own desires as being a mother. She has to lose her son, so to speak, in order to gain him. By preserving her son, she is going to make a sacrifice, basically, of allowing another woman to raise her child, actually allowing her enemy to raise her child, allowing the household that put the decree in place in the first place to raise her child. Do you hear what I'm saying? That this rock, this boulder that's in her path is a huge boulder. And that even the obedience of action that she has to take in order to move around the boulder involves sacrifice in her own life, in her own situation. She must allow her child to be raised in the hands of her captors. She must give up all rights over his destiny, his upbringing, his culture, even his worldview. And this is a sacrifice, especially at a time when having children and especially having sons was essential for womanhood. We're talking about Hebraic Womanhood 101. But it's a sacrifice that she's willing to make. Did it take her 3 months of looking at this beautiful child, of talking to him, of nursing him, to realize that she must lose him in order to save his life? Selflessness is at the core of motherhood. And the decision has to be made to adapt to the situation at hand and to work to provide safety for her son from the death sentence. So what does she do? How does she adapt? She begins by gathering resources that she has at her disposal. She builds. Remember in episode 1 of this series, we talked about how we as women, whenever the Most High, whenever it says that he built Hava, that he built her. And then we looked in Proverbs how a wise woman builds her house. And so we connected the two buildings and we said that a woman was built to build, right? So she builds, she takes these resources that she has at her disposal, right? And she builds an ark. And this word for ark is the same word that's used for Noah's ark. She has tar and she has pitch. So she fortifies this ark. And then she utilizes the execution instrument of the Nile near her to put the ark in. She uses the reeds that are at the edge of the Nile to help slow down her tiny baby as he travels in it. Now, I'm not sure if this was a routine of Pharaoh's daughter to bathe in the Nile, or if it was something that she or perhaps Miriam or perhaps Aaron heard from the Most High. But she's strategic in all of this because we can see that she's not putting Moses into this water for him to die. If that was the case, we wouldn't have the word ark used for this basket that she took to put him in. The ark is a vessel of safety. It's not an instrument of death. And so we can see how she utilizes even her enemies. You see, she's utilizing the water and she's utilizing basketry. She's utilized, which is a resource that women in ancient Israel had. And she's utilizing all of the things that she has at her disposal. And she's hearing from the Most High and she's following in that leading and that directing from him that this is what she needs to do. And instead of her bucking up against it, she's flowing with it. She's flowing with it. And apparently, she's teaching her daughter Miriam along the way because Miriam has a special duty in this mission. So let's keep reading. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. And her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child. And behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from among the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, or Moshe, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." Exodus chapter 2, verses 5 through 10. So we can see here that Pharaoh's daughter sees this beautiful child. And while she's looking at the child, Moses does something interesting. I'm going to go back to that slide. Because it says here that she opens the basket and she sees the child, and behold, listen, the baby wept. So Moses, who is a prophet, by the way, he speaks to her. He says something to her. He weeps. Okay? He weeps. And then it says here that she had compassion on him. The first thing that she does is she sees this child. And again, this is the same word that's used when Jochebed looked upon Moses. It says that she saw the child. That Hebrew word is ra'ah, just as his mother saw him. And so not just seeing, but hearing. And because it says that the baby wept. And the result of seeing him and hearing his weeping does something to her heart. She has pity on him. She understands in her mind, at least, that this is a Hebrew child. But she herself can't sentence him to death in that moment. Because you can see they are in the Nile River. This is the river that's supposed to be the instrument of death. She could simply drop the child into the Nile. But her momentary pity prevents her. And in all of this, she doesn't say, "I'm going to keep this child. I need to have this child." She doesn't say any of that. And that's where Miriam comes in. Miriam, being attentive to the leading and the directing of the Most High in this situation, she can see Pharaoh's daughter is contemplating the situation. And Miriam sees this key ingredient of pity. And she seizes the moment before it passes her by. She asks if she should go and call a Hebrew woman to nurse the child. In essence here, Miriam is making the decision for Pharaoh's daughter. Because Pharaoh's daughter didn't say she was going to keep the child. She felt sorry for the child, but she wasn't like, "I need to keep this child." Miriam makes a suggestion that makes it possible for her to keep the child. And so she decides that she's going to keep this child. And Moses is thus spared. But can you imagine the pressure on Miriam in that moment? Think about it as her being the slave girl speaking to Egyptian royalty. And then not only that, but the audacity that Miriam has to help Pharaoh's daughter in disobeying this edict that her father set in place. So this is like a boulder. You know, this could have been fear for Miriam. This could have stopped her from flowing. This could have stopped her from acting on the behalf of her brother. But she didn't allow this boulder of fear to stop her from flowing. She had a clear understanding of the will of the Most High, and she had a clear ability to take that resource of pity and to build with it and make it into deliverance for her brother. She transformed this ingredient. You know, we look at cooking shows, and one of the things in a cooking show, a competition, if you just take all the ingredients and put them on the plate and you don't transform them, you're probably not going to do very well on the show, because they look at the end product and they want to see a transformation. If I'm making bread and I just keep my yeast and my flour and my water all separate, I'm not going to have bread, right? So she's taking this ingredient of pity and transforming it into a product of deliverance for her brother. But not only deliverance for her brother, deliverance for her people. When we look at Moses, or Moshe, his name means rescued from the water. But he's also the writer of the Torah. And because he's the writer of the Torah, he's also the first moreh, or teacher of the Torah proper. The Torah, he's the teacher of it because he's the writer of it. We didn't have it until he came on the scene. And we already spoke about how the words Torah and the words moreh have this common root word of yara, which means to flow like water. From the beginning of his life, he taught us this art of flowing. His mother taught us this art of flowing. His sister taught us this art of flowing. He was able to bring water, to cause water to flow from a rock, right? And this outpouring of this water from the rock wasn't only for him, but it was for the nation, and even for us to this day. We are not told about Jochebed anymore in the scriptures. We don't know if she was even alive for the great deliverance of Israel from Egypt. We don't know if she saw the completion of the work that she was instrumental in preserving. But we can see how this vision that she birthed was far greater than herself. It was far greater than her family. It was part of the promise to Abraham that the Most High said he was going to bring a deliverance for his nation, his people. And it was part of the giving of the Torah to Israel. So when we look at Jochebed and we look at this woman whose womb brought forth the three leaders of the nation of Israel, we can understand how she had to flow. She didn't have a choice in the matter. See, most of us can make a mistake here and there. But when the nation of Israel, the leaders of the nation of Israel come from your womb, you cannot make a mistake. Listen to this. For I brought thee up out of the land of Egypt and redeemed thee out of the house of servants. And I sent before thee Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Do you see this? Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. The three leaders of the nation of Israel coming out of Egypt came from this woman's womb, came from the waters in this woman's womb, right? And so she had to act, she had to flow, and she taught Miriam how to flow. And she was able to bring about a deliverance for her people. I suggest ladies watching this video to watch Sister Onleilove Alston's video, Daughter of Zion, Who Does Not Want You to Give Birth, because she goes in depth in the topic of giving birth to a vision, and how whenever there is a vision that's to be given birth through us, how the enemy wants to destroy that vision before it's able to be fulfilled. And so I recommend everyone watch that video. The ability to flow is crucial to us as women of the Most High. As women, we must learn from Jochebed and Miriam's example of what it looks like to flow, what it looks like to discern the will of the Most High, what it looks like to overcome adversity as it rises up, and to build with what we have. You see, because some people will say, I don't have anything to build with. Well, Jochebed had a basket. She had some tar and some pitch. She had a river that they wanted her to throw her child in. She had some reeds by the river. But she had faith in the Almighty. She had a clear understanding, attentiveness, flexibility to the will of Yah. And she was able to take those ingredients. She was able to make something of it. What is damming up your flow? Are you able to flow? Is there a stiff-neckedness in you? When you think about a stiff neck, having a stiff neck is the opposite of flexibility. If you have a stiff neck, you gotta turn your whole body. You can't just turn your head. Your neck is stiff. So if someone's calling your name, you can't just turn your head and look at them. You gotta turn your whole body. But the problem with having a stiff neck is that if we have a stiff neck towards the Most High, if we're not willing to turn our head to him, how in the world are we going to be willing to turn our whole body to him, right? So we can't allow ourselves to walk and have this stiff neck, and we can't allow ourselves to have bitterness in our hearts. We have to break this cycle of stiff-neckedness and this cycle of bitterness in order to adapt and in order to flow. We always have to remember that what can't destroy us can only make us stronger. We have to take these resources that we have and we have to adapt. We have to bounce back higher and stronger. And it's not for us, but it's for his glory. It's for the glory of the Almighty. I want this message to be short, so I'm going to stop here. And as you can tell, I got emotional while, going through this presentation, because we as women have to protect the future of the nation. We have to, when we look at our children, we look at our seeds, when we look at the responsibility that we have as being teachers of our children, we have to always think about things in the spiritual. And we have to always think about how our children are looking at us. How do we break down? Do we stop? Do we keep moving when things happen in our lives? Do we allow situations to dam us up or to stop us? Are we resourceful? Do we pull together the things that we have and we make something out of it? Or do we just stop and throw our hands up and give up? But not only teaching our children, but teaching other women as well. The older women teaching the younger women, teaching us this art of flowing. And so we have to do it. Okay. We have to do it. We have to flow like water. Again, that involves being attentive to the leading and the directing of the Most High. And that also involves adapting and being flexible when hard situations arise in our lives. My name is Tirza Lewis. If you have any comments, you could leave them in the comments section. If you don't want to leave a comment on YouTube, you could send me an email, directakad.oneway@gmail.com. Our website is www.directakad.com. Shalom.